I'd like to send a little something to all you gargoyles and gargettes out there running amok tonight. And it goes something like this. Here, gargoyles! Here, gargoyles! Oh, gargoyles!
Doom, doom, boom, boom, doom, doom, doom. The case you're about to see is true in its own fictional universe. The names have not been changed to protect that of the innocent, because the innocent guy is the one on trial. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Bucket Think Tank, another round of Comic Chat. And this time we've got the Disneyness. And not just regular Disneyness, this is an entire Gargoyle-centric review here. We had 3 books. Actually, we only had 2. But because I like to try to condense all the Disney stuff into one video, minus a little special comic chat, for random Disney comic, I wanted to wait for Gargoyles. And so we're technically an issue behind, so we're going to knock that out of the park now. So we're going to with issue 2, with issue 2 of Gargoyles Dark Ages. So, if you recall, we left off with this story. The premise is, of course, this takes place 1,000 and some odd years ago, when superstition and the sword ruled. In this time of darkness, in this world of fear, in this age of gargoyles, the gargoyle we'll later know as Hudson is in charge, and he has made a deal with Robert and the now Prince Malcolm to defend themselves from their wicked brother Cullen, or Malcolm's brother Cullen, so that who has declared himself king after he's already apparently assassinated their father. So yeah, and the gargoyle will know as Hudson. What do we call him now? I'm gonna call him Wyvern. Let's call him Wyvern for now. I'm sure there won't be a weird name later to come up for this. Anyway, so Wyvern has been approached by Robert as an envoy for Prince Malcolm to, hey, you help us, or we'll protect you during the day. All right, Wyvern here isn't quite sure, but his mate convinces him, like, hey, human problems can quickly become gargoyle problems. Best we get on top of this now. You know, let's extend the hand of friendship, as well as the fact that Robert remembers that when he was a kid, he and the gargoyles worked out pretty well. Like, it was cool. So they agree, and the battle begins. So everything gets set. Everybody's got their eyes glowing. Everybody's roaring. Everyone but Goliath is like, everyone's ready but Goliath. Goliath's like, we shouldn't be doing this. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. Or his name will be Goliath later. Actually, now he doesn't have a name either. Now that does the gargoyle we know as Demona. But anyway, the Wyvern, as we call him, tells everybody else, tells the younger generation to wait while the older ones go off and fight, with the impression that, hey, you may be great warriors, but someone has to protect the family, all right, in case the worst happens. So they go out. Demona and her friend don't want to listen, so they go off. And it turns out Cullen has brought a sorcerer, and his sorcerer has an answer to the gargoyle supremacy, which is, hey, we can fly, aerial supremacy. So he calls out, hands from the water, and grabs him, injects him in water bubbles. I'm like, this is definitely out of Naruto. So what's their answer? Well, they brought their own wizard, the Archmage, or who will know as the Archmage. I think he still is the Archmage. And he goes, Fulminus Venite, and he cancels out the magic, and their wizard goes like, oh, he's here. And the Archmage goes, oh, he's here. Alright, and they're like, alright, man, let's wizard it up, bitch, let's go. You ain't got it, but say the word, man, let's go. Alright, so, Goliath and the other gargoyles are still watching. Demona has an argument with her friend about what kind of mate Goliath is, and that leads to the elder gargoyle, Wyvern's mate, or Hudson, mate, saving her, and then she gets killed, and this finds out, and Wyvern gets really messed up, like, no! And he goes, and he cradles her as she dies. It's really sad. And, yeah, the tide of the battle does not look good. It goes in, he's mad, love it. And as we advance, love it. But in the scuffle, Demona's taken. Now Goliath wants to go out, and they're like, no, you don't. And Wyvern goes like, no, don't. All right, hostage situation. We'll have to wait. And Wyvern calls his daughter, which lets some people thinking, but we're going to put a pin in that right now. All right, so they all agree like, hey, you know what? Let's just let him go. Most of the humans like, well, no, sacrifice the gargoyle, let's kill Cullen. And Archmage points out, like, what is one gargoyle is the fate of a kingdom? He goes, it's everything. All right. So like, hey, you trust me? Yeah, trust me to do this. All right. So Malcolm like, okay. And Robert, primarily because Robert also pointed out that, look, I promised them that we keep them safe, so which means you have to keep that promise as well. Bob's like, okay, fine. So there's a little stalemate. He said, look, take your men and go. He's still walking off with Damone like, hey, we're good. But he's like, Wyvern's like, no, we let her go, but we are going to save her. We will save my daughter, and that's what the comic ends. So issue 2 is pretty straightforward, not too complicated, and I like that. So the issue here is the claim of Demona being Hudson's daughter. Now, realistically, this would make no sense in the confines of the original series, alright? Primarily because not only do those two not have a good relationship at all, it is important to note that in the Avalon series, when Elisa brings up the fact that Angela looks like Demona but has Goliath's coloring, and she acts like, who are her parents? Goliath says children belong to the entire clan. It is the Gargoyle way. In other words, by default, every child from that generation, from the Goliath and Demona's generation, are Hudson's children. All right, the same thing will go further down. The previous generation is always the parent of the the next generation. So, yeah, every older gargoyle is Demona's parent. Every older gargoyle is Goliath's parent. So that works out. This was a pretty short and straightforward issue, like I said before. It was cool seeing the Archmage not being a pain. Don't get used to that, people. Don't get used to that. We don't see a lot of... Well, we see a lot of Hudson in the present day series doing a lot of combat. But I think this is him in his prime. This is him like, nah, man, you don't want this. You don't want this, alright? So it was real fun to see that, as well as his intelligence. Also, again, really cool is how Goliath is just watching all of this. Like, he's learning to be the leader we will see him become. So, that's great. That's great. Overall, though, nice, short, sweet, to the point, always makes for the best stories. Next up, we're going to go straight to issue 3. Gargoyles Dark Ages, issue 3, as we just said. So anyway, we see the gargoyle we know as Hudson, who we'll call Wyvern until further notice, is waiting for his scout, who, oddly enough, has the same coloring as Demona. So, might be hinted at who her biological parents are. He goes in, makes the same point that they made earlier, so with a little signal there. So, I guess we can also presume this gargoyle is Wyvern's second, to that extent. And meanwhile, Demona is still held hostage. So they're all getting ready. They send out the Archmage to do his thing, like, hey. He opens up his book, which clearly is Ligramorum Arcanorum. We're going to see a lot of that in the actual series. He goes Fulminus Venite and he just starts firing lightning at the stuff, setting stuff on fire. King Callum is proving to be totally irredeemable as he grabs the little crown or coronet off of the gargoyle known as Demona. It's like, maybe we'll mess it down and give it to our child. Like, there we go. He's enjoying being horrible. He's like, sir, my lord, your grace, there's a problem outside. What does it mean? Well, everything's on fire. And there's some crazy old man shouting Latin, and lightning follows every word he says. Like, so you remember the end of the TV series Merlin? When Merlin just becomes Emerus again, just starts, blasting out enemies? That's happening now. So everyone's freaking out. Demona is actually scared. And she's also coughing up a bit, because, the fire. Goliath and Wyvern come in like, yeah, we're here to save the day, yeah, they go in. Interesting here is this is supposed to be a very strong and hard chain to break. She can't break it, but as she tries to tell her love to leave, he's like, no, I will free you, and he breaks it. So I wonder if this is the story, the event, that earns him the name Goliath. Maybe, possibly, who knows? So they go in, they free their hostage, and they're all good as everything burns in flames. And Prince Malcolm's like, hey, great. Also, apparently King Callum took Prince Malcolm's kid. I believe that's Princess Catherine. So anyway, we go in, we do the thing. I hope I've got this right. No. Oh, that's Cullen. That's King Cullen. His brother is Prince Malcolm, who they're helping out. Okay, there we go. So anyway, they're wondering like, hey, all those people that died. Goliath's like, oh no, not a single person died, and really cool. So eventually the quote unquote ceasefire has been held, and there are two events going on: the coronation. So the coronation for Prince Kenneth, and out of gratitude, Prince Kenneth. Oh, now King Kenneth makes his brother the official prince, heir to the throne, whatnot, presumably. At the same time this is going on, Robert is taking his daughter to the burial for the Gargoyles they lost. And it's a very sweet, tender moment. How they do it? They do a cremation ceremony. The Gargoyles are cremated, and everyone grabs a handful and they glide through, spreading the ashes. So that's really cool. I heard about this in the old comics, apparently, because at one point Goliath will die. Yeah, Goliath will die. When both Goliath and Hudson pass away, each of them are given the same sort of treatment. So that's cool. I gotta find those comics. But anyway, it goes off. Prince Malcolm meets with the gargoyle we call Wyvern. At the same time, the Archmage meets with then Demona, well, soon to be Demona, and says, "Hey, I want you by my side. I want you to be my advisor in between, this whole thing we're creating, because this point here, Castle Wyvern, is still too great of an entry point for our enemies. So we're going to be that first line of defense for anyone who wants to come through here." I'm like, okay, we'll do that. The Archmage says, I know what it's like to feel powerless, to be held, to feel weak. I see potential in you. How would you like to become my student? So they agree to it. And I'm guessing this is a story where the Archmage gives Demona her name, because at the same time, Prince Malcolm says, I need to give you a name, because this isn't working out here. So, all right, what are you going to call me? Well, you've been nothing but help, so I'd like to call you Mentor. And I'm like, well, okay. And that's how the comic ends, is one giant eye opens. So ultimately, this was a fine issue. I think the problem I may have had is, in addition to forgetting about this issue for a bit, having to knock it down, is I always felt, because if you look at the beginning of the story, in issue 1, we do see Brooklyn, Lexington, and Broadway there. I'm like, should they have hatched by now? And at the same time, I always thought Castle Wyvern was there before Goliath. Now, that isn't a deal-breaker thing for me. I'm like, okay, so my little headcanon about the timeline didn't quite work out. You win some, you lose some. My problem here is this Mentor bit. So, in the episode Vows, when Goliath, Xanatos, Fox, I forget Xanatos' dad's name, and Demona are all sent back in time, and present-day Goliath meets Hudson in the past, and he has to pretend to be, well, not pretend to be, he has to, eventually Adams is like, hey, look, I'm from the future, and he, instead of calling him, he calls him my mentor. So I guess they thought, well, I guess that's his name. Like, well, no. Hudson is legitimately Goliath's mentor. This story even sort of emphasizes that, the fact that Goliath is constantly asking Hudson for advice, input on everything. So, yeah, I don't know why we say, that's his name. His name is Mentor. Why? Because Goliath called him Mentor. I'm like, because he's his mentor. That's the one problem I've had with this. Really, I think at some point we'll see that it'll be the Archmage that gives Demona her name, theoretically. Well, no, because it's not what happened. How did I forget? Macbeth gives her name. Alright. Overall, though, still fun, still great. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next. The building of the castle. Goliath and Demona's eventual commitment. Goliath getting his name. Which is weird because Mentor. Goliath. Well, that's an actual name. So, you go from that one. Because remember, Gargoyles don't give each other names, which is weird. Still doesn't make sense to me. It's like, hey, you know who I'm talking to. It's like when your mother just says, gives you the wrong name. Like she calls one child, but she's calling you specifically. So you just have to know. I don't know. And finally, And finally, we have Gargoyles issue 9. But before that, you thought I forgot. I didn't forget our Funko, which happens to be Goliath. So I think I've got the only Gargoyles Funkos I'm missing are Lex, Brooklyn, and Bronx. That's kind of it. My least favorite Gargoyles. They're not bad. It's just that I like every other Gargoyle more. Well, at least the ones they've released so far. So yeah, yay! So anyway, now we come to the trial of the century. Oh, not really the century, probably the decade. Depends, especially for the 90s. This would have been the trial of the decade. Yeah, that'd have been great. So anyway, if you recall, this is the day we've been waiting for, the hearing to determine whether or not Goliath is fit to stand trial and the eventual trial itself. So we open up with figuring out whether or not a hearing has to happen. All right, let alone if Goliath should be there. Goliath's attorney says he needs to be here because it's also determined to determine his competency. And hey, you want to give me a reason to have this whole thing thrown out? Let's go. And the prosecution, like, yeah, this is definitely the DA from the actual series, who, if you watch, is always there, and is somewhat of a casual victim of the Gargoyles. Not the biggest victim. She's just usually there, and she's like, Gargoyles. They've done nothing to her. But yeah. So anyway, Lexington is messaging his friend. I believe it's called AMP. Or AMP possibly. Who this person is, we don't know. I believe this is the one Broadway is sort of happy about. So this is someone that Lexington is in a somewhat serious relationship with. So we'll go from there. He's talking about the trial, and everyone's watching. All eyes are on, especially for the Manhattan clan. So they go in. Their first character witness is, wow, how did I forget his name? Halcyon Renard. All right, he talks about the fact that he's been his friend for nearly 2 years, so that also gives us a time frame as to exactly where we are here. So that means it's been, 3 years? I'm trying to remember the time frame of events from when Goliath arrived, the attack on Sabat's Industries on their first ship, and now, it was a year or not. Let's say 2.5 years just to be safe. He talks about the fact that Goliath has been a friend. He possesses a great intelligence, great qualities like integrity and restraint, qualities that a lot of humans lack. So he's given a great character witness. But then the prosecution also points out that Renard is also the one who has been supplying the Gargoyle Task Force with its weaponry. And he's pointing out that, hey, I was trying to do this that way. It would be he was trying to keep control over it. He didn't want anyone else doing it. So in other words, yeah, he's provided to law enforcement. It's not like he's, equipping the corpsmen, but it looks like, hey, he's my friend, but I'm afraid of him. All right, which seems to be the angle that the prosecution is going with. Goliath comes in, talks about himself, I am Goliath. I'm called Goliath. He talks about, where he is, like where he's been from, what he wants to do here, what he and his clan want to do. And he points out this is great, but this woman's ready, like so. You were betrayed by humans 1,000 years ago. So, does that not mean that you resent us all? Like, no. Perhaps, but your ways are not our ways. And she's so that must mean that you have totally different beliefs than us. So how can you be considered equal? I'm like, that is stupid. That was like a gotcha moment. Like, well, no, because by default, different groups of people have different beliefs than other groups of people. So yeah, there we go. But then again, that's probably the point that's trying to be hammered home here. That Goliath and the Gargoyles are, in essence, the other. Or this is the better version of what the X-Men try to do, because the X-Men, they don't work for this. Or they probably did at one point, but now they don't. They just don't. But anyway, the attorney says, look, we need another witness. There's no one. There has to be someone. Goliath goes, no, we're not using that one. They're like, dude, we got to use that one. So he's like, fine, all right. So no further questions. They go into other witnesses. The one who examined Goliath, or says, hey, yeah, they're a bit different from us and whatnot. They're entirely different species. And I don't know what the defense was like. So, did you converse with Goliath? Did you talk to him? Did you talk to him about his biology? So it's like, well, no. So you just examine people without their consent or knowledge. I'm like, okay, all right, I see what we're going here, calling in the credibility that he's a biased source, that he acted in a way that would not be suitable for anyone else when covering someone else's medical history. All right. So then we talk to, oh my god, no, not this guy, not John Castaway, the founder of the Quarrymen, the Gargoyle KKK. Like literally go in, wearing hoods, carrying sledgehammers. It was wild. So Margot Yale poses questions about, hey, Goliath says that the humans hunted them to extinction. Is that true? Like, well, I'm just a leader of basically the KKK, and I'm going to say that minority is lying. All right? In what evidence we have found, it turns out that most of those humans were acting in self-defense. So, yeah, I don't quite get that. And I'm proud that, my ancestor happened to be one of those people. I'm like, so, defense comes in like, so, you're descended from Magnus Canmore. Like, yeah, I'm proud of it. And which explains why you found the Quarrymen, and he seemed dedicated to the destruction of other groups for the benefit and whatnot. He pretty much says, like, look, you're a leader of a hate group. Why is anyone listening to you? So I like it. Then this is where it starts to go even further south for Goliath, namely the security guard, the prison guard. This should have been a slam for the defense, okay? Because as he points out, hey, Goliath had every chance to escape, and he chose not to, all right? He had every chance to hurt someone. He chose not to. And he had every chance to just let them get hurt by the pack. And not only did he defend them, but he kept them safe, helped lock the pack up, and he went back to his cell. Alright, so it's good. But as Margot points out, during all that time, did you put the remote to your shock collar down? He says no. That's because even though all that happened, you still didn't feel safe around him. I'm like, okay, so that didn't work. So he's like, okay. Looks downhill. He's like, hold on, I have another witness, a rebuttal witness. And Goliath's like, no, you're not supposed to do that. He's getting angry, like, no, I have to do what's best for my client. So who's our witness? Who is this rebuttal witness who's apparently going to be the break in the case? It is Elisa Maza. I'm like, no, this is getting wild. And that's how the comic ends. So, technically, they've called Goliath's girlfriend to the stand. Because didn't use the other one. And that's how the comic ends. Gargoyles issue 9 is fun. We had plenty of other issues where we're going from one spot to the next, seeing all these different stories go out. Now we're right here. We're right here in one story in one spot. And the only time we go off somewhere is to watch someone else watching the events. And they needed another character witness. They should have gotten Macbeth. They should have got Macbeth in. Macbeth is also a scholar. As we saw in the Goliath Chronicles, I'm not sure, they don't really count the Goliath Chronicles, which, fair. He didn't write it, so he has no obligation to it. But they needed another witness. Xanatos would have been too confusing a witness. Again, Macbeth would have been a great one. Dingo, from the pack, he'd have been a great witness. Who else? I forget his name. The guy from Lighthouse in the Sea of Time, the writer, Hudson's friend. Well, it's not a great character witness for Goliath, but it's a great witness for the Gargoyles. There's a bunch of homeless kids if you count the Goliath Chronicles. That's kind of it. Margot's approach is the fact that gargoyles are fundamentally different and people do not feel safe around them. So it's sort of a good... She had some good angles, and the fact she presumably didn't let Goliath explain anything is good. All she needs are yes or no questions. Alright? Yes or no answers for yes or no questions. Alright? You don't need the witness to explain anything else. Which meant that it fell to the defense to probe those questions. He really should have let Renard explain himself. Alright? He should have let Goliath elaborate on the differences between gargoyles and humans. Also pointing out that, again, as I said, humans across different groups all have different beliefs. Alright? So Yeah, there we go. Um, if it comes out that Elisa is dating Goliath, that might have. Well, I don't know what's going to say about Elisa. It might cause more problems than. Well, for everybody, really. This is going to cause more problems. So Elisa's going to have to tread carefully into exactly her relationship with Goliath. Now, the problem is, though, a lot of their enemies have seen Elisa and Goliath together. And it's kind of hard not to notice how close those two are. Especially a certain Dracon, who was definitely tricked into thinking that not only was Elisa on his side, but that Elisa was off limits. Because she was Goliath's. Alright? Really great episode. What was it? Protection? I think it was Protection. Or Protect and Serve. One of those two. So, overall, will it be fun to see where that goes? Who else? Who else? Like, I gotta think. Oh, they don't have a good PR department. They don't have a good PR. Wait. Oh, no, this is the Goliath Chronicles. Is the episode with Hudson and Glaucoma in the Goliath Chronicles? If it isn't, they can use those doctors. Again, why is the quorum in there? I don't know. It's like, what is their case? What is their case? Alright, by default, the defense attorney was right, said this dude's part of a hate group. Why are we letting him talk? He wasn't involved. I guess his whole purpose is he's supposed to be the history expert on gargoyles. Alright, sure. But I don't know. Overall, this has been really fun. I've liked these Gargoyles comics. It's nice to see the crew back together. There's been talks about, hey, let's reboot this. Look, don't. Alright, there's no reason to. Let it be as it is. All I really need is these comics. That's kind of it. Alright, unless Greg Wiseman is going to helm it, I don't want to see it. Alright? Also, there's a lot of discussion on Twitter going on. Well, not a lot of discussion. It's just your average. Oh, I'm sorry, X. About whether or not Gargoyles is woke. And I'm like, it's 90s woke, which is good woke, which is really good woke. 90s woke is sort of like, hey, these are these issues, let's address them and go from there. What we call current woke, which is negative, is that a lot of moral grandstanding and no real discussion on the topic. It's kind of it. But anyway, we're rambling here, and if I'm not going to show you those tweets, there's no point about it. So anyway, with that much brings to a close. If you are new to the Bucket Think Tank, feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe to all those fun little algorithmy things, and I will catch you all later. This is the Bucket Think Tank signing off. Thanks for watching. As always, may your fandom serve you well.
I'd like to send a little something to all you gargoyles and gargettes out there running amok tonight. And it goes something like this. Here, gargoyles! Here, gargoyles! Oh, gargoyles! Oh, yeah, gargoyles! Do you hear me calling ya? Come on home to me. 'Cause I need you, my macabre gargoyle. Come to me, gargoyle. Oh, God.